The word lands in my kitchen like a small stone in a quiet pond. Useless. It is evening. The light above the sink glows soft and yellow. The soup smells of tomatoes and basil. A spoon taps the edge of the pot. I stand very still and feel the sting of that word settle into my chest, as if it is trying to make a home there. I do not shout. I do not argue. My daughter-in-law's voice is already fatting down the hall, and all I hear now is the hum of the fridge and the clock ticking like a gentle heartbeat. If you are listening to me right now, thank you for keeping me company. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I hope you're sitting somewhere comfortable. I'm going to tell you something tender. I hold the edge of the counter and breathe. I look at the steam lifting from the pot and think of all the dinners I have cooked in this kitchen. I think of the hands that once lifted heavy pots beside me. I whisper to myself, it is only a word, but it feels like a door closing. I want to tell you why it hurts so much. I once gave my home to my boy and his wife with a grateful heart. I did it for love. I told myself love would keep us safe. I was wrong. But I learned. I am not here to blame. I am here to tell the truth in a calm, steady way, the way you tell a child a bedtime story when the night feels too big. This is a story about quiet kindness and how it can be mistaken for weakness. It is about how a single piece of paper can change a life. It can push you to the edge of your own porch and make you feel like a guest in a place you built with your own hands. And it is also about how that same paper can change it back when you find your voice and pick up a pen. Come with me for a while. Let us sit together and breathe. Let us open the door to the beginning. We will go back to warm mornings and the smell of fresh bread. We will go back to the click of my late husband's tools in the garage and to the small life that once felt big enough. That is where this story starts, long before the word useless ever touched my kitchen. We were young when we bought the house. We had a little money and a lot of hope. The porch was small and the paint was peeling. My husband squeezed my hand and said, "We can make this ours." I believed him. We spent that first weekend with brushes and old sheets on the floor. The walls were a pale yellow that looked like morning. We laughed when we got paint on our noses. We ate sandwiches sitting on the stairs, our legs tired and happy. In the backyard stood a thin lemon tree, more twig than tree. It never gave us a single lemon, not one. Still, I loved it. We strung tiny lights on it in the winter, and in the summer I sat under it with a book, even though the shade was hardly more than a promise. My husband kept his tools in the garage. He loved the sound of a screwdriver clicking into place. The smell of sawdust and oil became part of our house. He fixed squeaky doors and loose handles. He hummed while he worked, like the house was learning a song. The first storm blew rain under the front door. We laughed and pushed towels along the floor with our feet. We learned where the roof needed patching. I stirred soup on the stove while thunder rolled in the distance. The room was warm and I felt safe. Years turned like pages. We celebrated small things, a new toaster, fresh curtains, a neighbor's baby. We knew people by name and they knew us. The porch light at dusk felt like a friendly eye. Then my husband got sick. It was not sudden, but it was steady. Hospital visits, soft voices, a line of pill bottles that made our kitchen look like a pharmacy. He smiled as much as he could. He held my hand in the end and said, "Take care of our boy." After he passed, the house felt too quiet. The hum of the fridge seemed louder than before. I baked to keep myself moving. Bread, pies, anything that made the oven warm and the air sweet. It helped me breathe. Daniel came home every weekend. He held my hand at the table the same way his father had held mine. We walked slowly around the block and talked about nothing important. He brought me newspapers and asked me to circle recipes. He was always gentle. "Mom, I'm okay," he would say. "You don't have to worry about me." But I did. Worry is a habit made from love, and I had been loving him all his life. He told me about a girl named April one evening. We were eating soup, and the spoon slowed in his hand when he said her name. He tried to act casual, but his eyes had a soft light in them. I listened and felt something warm open in my chest. I met April at my kitchen table. She brought pastries in a little paper box. "Hello, I'm April," she said with a shy smile. Her hair was pulled back, and she had the kind of eyes that looked straight at you. She talked about her job and the tiny apartment she was renting. She spoke of plans, not in a loud way, but in a clear one. "I want to save. I want to grow," she said. She reminded me of the lemon tree, thin and hopeful, waiting for a season that might finally be kind. I felt protective at first. My son is my son, but I watched how she listened to him. I saw her put her hand on his sleeve when he laughed. I saw the way he relaxed around her, like a door opening with no creak. After dinner, she helped me wash dishes. "You don't have to," I said. "I like to," she replied. We stood side by side at the sink. Warm water, faint lemon soap. It felt easy. They got married the next spring. It was a small ceremony with family and a few friends. The sky was clear, and there were white folding chairs on green grass. I straightened Daniel's tie. He kissed my cheek. We danced slowly, mother and son. My head was near his shoulder. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. He squeezed my fingers. "Thank you, Mom." When it was time to leave, April hugged me. She said, "Thank you for raising him." Then she said, almost in a whisper, "Mom." It was the first time she called me that. It landed in my heart like a small, bright bird. They moved into a small place across town. The rent was high, but they managed. On Sundays, they came for dinner. I made stew or baked chicken. We sat at the table and told each other about our weeks. April stood beside me while I cooked. I showed her how I sliced onions thin. She taught me how to set reminders on my phone. We traded little tricks like gifts. "Your kitchen is so calm," she said. "It grew that way," I answered. Time moved, as it does. I learned her rhythms. She liked to set the table early. She liked to wash the pans while they were still warm. She moved with a quiet energy that made me smile. We shared a lot of small smiles. After a year, they were tired of the rent. "We want to save for a future," Daniel said. "We don't know how to get ahead." I listened and felt the old urge to take care rise up in me. I said, "Come home, there is room here." They hesitated. "Are you sure?" April asked. "We don't want to be a burden." I shook my head. "This is your home too. We will make a plan," I said. My voice felt strong and happy. We made a simple plan. They would have the big bedroom at the back. I would take the front room with the morning light. We would share the kitchen and the bills. We agreed to talk before any big change. Moving day was full of boxes and soft laughter. Daniel carried heavy things with Mr. Lee from next door. April wrapped glasses in towels. I labeled drawers and showed them where we kept the spare light bulbs. It felt like the house was stretching to welcome them. We settled into gentle routines. I woke early and made tea. April liked coffee, and the smell filled the kitchen like a hug. Daniel left for work with a banana and a kiss on April's cheek. I waved from the porch. The lemon tree shook in the small wind. The first time Noah laughed, it sounded like a bell. He was a baby with bright eyes. He clutched my finger and refused to let go. I walked him up and down the hall, whispering a lullaby I had not sung in years. I learned the weight of a baby on one shoulder again. I learned to make dinner with one hand. I learned which songs made him close his eyes. At night, I washed the bottles and set them in a neat line to dry. Sophie came later with a soft cry and a round little face. She had hair that stood up after naps like a crown. The house filled with small socks and tiny shoes. There were toys under the couch and a stroller by the door. I told bedtime stories in a whisper. Noah would ask, "Again?" And I would say, "One more." Sophie fell asleep with her palm open, like she was holding a piece of sky. When they slept, I stood in the doorway and watched their slow breaths. Mornings were busy but sweet. I packed lunches with careful hands. A sandwich cut into triangles. A note that said, "Have a good day." Noah liked apples. Sophie liked grapes. I wrote their names on little bags with a marker. I felt useful. I liked feeling useful. I folded laundry while the kettle sang. I paid the utility bill more often than not because I could. It felt natural to give. Giving had always been my way to say, "I love you." Sometimes April would say, "You don't have to do everything." I smiled and said, "I like to." She worked hard and came home tired. Daniel worked late some nights. It felt good to be the steady piece in the middle. Holidays were simple and warm. I baked cookies, and the children put sprinkles on in joyful heaps. Daniel untangled lights while April chose which ornaments to hang low and which to put high. We took a picture by the lemon tree, even though it still never gave us a single lemon. It was our joke. One afternoon, April stood in the living room with her hands on her hips. "I think we should rearrange," she said. "Open it up a bit." I nodded. "Of course," I said. My voice was light, but my heart tugged. We moved the couch and the chairs. She put the bookshelf against a different wall. She cleared the small table where I used to keep my sewing basket. "This looks cleaner," she said. She smiled, and I smiled too. But that night, I reached for my sewing and found it in a box by the closet. The room looked nice. It looked like a picture in a magazine. It did not look like my living room. I told myself change is a kind of love, too. The next week, she asked if we could move a few things in the kitchen. "Just to make it flow better," she said. I said yes. She put my favorite teapot higher than my reach. She moved the spices I used every day to a shelf behind the toaster. It was a small thing. It was also not small. I stood on my tiptoes and stretched, and then I got a stool. I told myself, "It does not matter." I told myself, "You can adapt." And I did. Daniel noticed me reaching for the teapot and brought it down for me. "We can put it lower, Mom," he said. "It's okay." I shook my head. "It's fine," I said. I did not want to cause a ripple in our calm water. At dinner, April said, "I love how the light falls now. The room feels bigger." I said, "It does." We ate pasta and laughed at Noah's little jokes. Sophie wore a crown of paper and called herself Queen of Noodles. The night was soft again. I did not know the line between helping and disappearing. I thought I was just moving with the family, the way a tree moves with the wind. I thought love meant not taking up too much space. I thought the house could hold all of us without anyone having to shrink. I see it now, looking back. The line was there, faint and kind, waiting for me to notice it. But I did not see it then. I would not learn it until later, when the quiet kindness I offered felt like it had turned invisible. I learned it only when it was almost too late. The first changes were small. My spices were moved to a higher shelf, and the labels faced out like soldiers. My teapot was placed in a different cupboard, next to a stack of white mugs that all matched. I smiled when I saw it. I told myself change is a way of caring. Still, my hand reached for the old spot and hung in the air, confused, before it found the new place. I stood on a little stool to reach the come-in one afternoon. My knee wobbled. I laughed at myself and made it a small joke in my head. "You are not tall, Grace," I said softly. I brought the stool down slowly and put it away, as if that made the change final. April liked the counters clear. She liked the sink empty. She liked the knives in the block, not in a drawer. None of this was wrong. It was just new. Sometimes I would walk into the kitchen and stop, not sure where to put my hands. One evening, I stepped to the stove to stir a sauce. April was cooking. The timer was counting down in bright red numbers. The smell was garlic and butter and something green. I reached for the spoon. April said, "Please don't hover." Her voice was steady, not sharp, but it had an edge I had not heard before. I pulled my hand back. "Of course," I said. I stepped to the side and wiped my fingers on a towel. I told myself she was tired, not unkind. I had said those words to myself before, and I would say them again. The words were like a small blanket I kept in my pocket. Later that night, after the dishes were done and the children were asleep, Daniel hugged me. He smelled like soap and the cold air from outside. "Don't worry, Mom," he said. "I'll talk to April." I shook my head and placed my hand on his arm. "Be gentle," I said. "She is family, we are all learning." He looked at me with those eyes that still held the boy I had raised. "I know," he said. "I just want you to feel okay." I smiled as if I already did. The house was quiet. The fridge hummed. A train far away made a soft sound like a sigh. Life settled into a pattern where favors became routine. April texted me at lunchtime, "Could you pick up Noah? Meeting ran long." I wrote back, "Of course." At 4, another message, "Can you start the rice?" I wrote. "On it." The words did not feel like a burden. They felt like a way to be useful. I cooked most nights because I liked to. It made the house smell like safety. I chopped onions and carrots while the afternoon light moved across the floor. After everyone ate and went to bed, I scrubbed the floors. I liked to leave the kitchen clean for the morning, even if no one noticed who made it that way. Saturday mornings, I made pancakes and wiped sticky hands. I packed snacks for the park and folded small t-shirts warm from the dryer. I would find little socks in the sheets and smile at the surprise of them. The laundry basket was a gentle weight on my hip. It felt like purpose. One Sunday afternoon, I was writing a list for the grocery store. April stood beside me and traced a line on the countertop. "We need more space," she said. Her voice was not unhappy. It was thoughtful. She looked at the stove like it was a puzzle and not a friend. "The kitchen is old. The drawers stick. It would be nice to have an island." Daniel joined us and leaned on the doorframe. "We could look into it," he said. "Maybe a small renovation, maybe new counters. The kids will only get bigger." He glanced at me. "What do you think, Mom?" I looked around at the cupboards we had painted long ago. They were chipped at the edges. They had held a lot. "If it makes life easier, we can think about it," I said. Money came up, as it always does with houses. April ran her finger down a sheet of prices she had printed. Daniel opened a laptop and looked at a bank page. "We might refinance," he said. "Interest rates are better now." He exhaled slowly. It was the kind of breath a person takes when they are carrying more than they want to say. A week later, they sat with me at the table. A bowl of oranges sat in front of us. The light was soft and late. Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom," he said, "the bank said it's easier if the house is just in our names for now." April nodded. "Just to make the process simple," she said. "We can put everything back after, it's just paperwork." I felt something small inside me fold and unfold. "Will I still be safe here?" I asked. The words were calm, but my chest felt tight. I wanted the answer to be very simple. I wanted it to be as simple as putting a kettle on the stove. "Of course," Daniel said. "Always." His voice was warm and quick, like he wanted to wrap me in it. April reached out and touched my hand. "Yes," she said. "This is your home." I nodded because I wanted to nod. I wanted to believe the best version of the people I loved. That night, I stood on the porch and watched the porch light attract small moths. The lemon tree was still a thin silhouette. I thought of my husband and the way he read every paper before he signed it. I thought of how I had always been the one to trust first and read later. I closed my eyes and let the night air cool my face. The signing day came quickly. We did not go to a big office. A notary came to the house with a square bag full of papers. She was polite, with a quiet voice. She set the stack on the table, and the edges lined up like steps. Daniel pointed. "Just sign where she marks," he said. The notary placed small flags on the pages. The pen felt heavier than it looked. I pressed it to the paper and wrote my name over and over until the letters felt like they belonged to someone else. I saw the word quitclaim on one page, and the letters were dense and dull. I did not ask what it meant. I told myself this was simple. I told myself I was safe. When we were done, the notary stamped a page. The sound of the stamp was small and final. She smiled and slid the papers back into her bag. "Thank you," she said. "Have a good day." The door closed behind her with the soft click of a latch. We were in our kitchen again, and everything looked the same. After the papers, there were small shifts. April stood in the kitchen doorway one evening and said, "We'll take it from here." She meant the dinner. She meant the shopping list. She meant the plan for the week. I nodded and found a seat at the little table by the window. The room felt different, as if the air noticed the change before I did. I began to ask, "Do you want me to?" in my own kitchen. "Do you want me to start the water? Do you want me to set the table?" Sometimes the answer was yes. Sometimes it was, "It's okay. We've got it." I made my peace with the chair by the window. I watched and kept my hands in my lap. When April's parents came for dinner, the house was lively. The table was full. The children were excited and loud. I sat at the corner with my napkin on my lap. April's father held up his fork and said with a cheerful laugh, "Looks like you're retiring from cooking." April's mother smiled at me and said, "Passing the spoon, are we?" They meant it kindly. The words still stung a little, like lemon in a small cut. I smiled back. "I am happy to eat," I said. We laughed. I cleared a plate or two and April said, "Sit, please, I'll get it." I sat and I did as asked. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, I wrapped leftovers and wiped the stove with slow circles. A few days after that, April stood in my doorway. "I had an idea," she said. "What if we made this room a play space during the day, just so the toys aren't everywhere?" She spoke softly, kindly. "We would put everything back at night." I looked around. My sweaters were stacked on the chair. My books were in a small pile by the bed. A basket held my sewing. I nodded. "If it helps the children, we can try." She smiled, relieved. "You're wonderful," she said. The word made me warm and sad at the same time. That evening, I took my sweaters and folded them into a smaller drawer. I put the sewing basket in the closet. I moved my chair closer to the window and placed a small lamp beside it. The room looked neat. It looked useful. I told myself that the window light would be enough company for me when the toys were here. A whiteboard appeared on the kitchen wall the next week. April drew boxes for days and wrote down meals and appointments. The marker squeaked. She wrote our names next to chores: Daniel trash, April laundry, grandma school pickup, meal prep, bath time Tuesdays. I stood beside her and nodded. "This is helpful," I said, and it was, but I watched as decisions were written without talk. Contractor meeting Friday 2 p.m. Loan call Monday after drop-off. Summer trip planning Saturday night. I was there for all the work. I was not there for those lines. I told myself it was because they were busy. I told myself this was the natural shape of a young family's life. I poured tea and added a little more honey. I set my cup on a coaster so I would not leave a ring. At the store, I filled the cart the way I always had. Flour, eggs, apples, cereal with small shapes the children loved. I added paper towels and laundry soap, even when we still had some. I liked knowing we would not run out. At the register, I paid and put the receipt in my purse. It felt easier than asking. When I came home, April opened the bags and said, "Oh, you didn't need to." She put apples in a bowl and pushed it to the center of the counter. "Thank you," she said. She meant it, but no one stopped me. No one took my card out of the cashier's hand. I paid again the next week and again and again. New labels appeared in the fridge in neat handwriting. Leftovers, veggies, kids' snacks. "Please follow the system," a note said with a smiley face. I smiled back in my heart and did my best. I put the yogurt where the yogurt should go. I put the butter in its marked place. Order matters. I know that well. One day I put soup in the wrong container. The lid did not match. It wobbled. April fixed it and said, "Let's try to keep it consistent." Her tone was soft. I nodded and said, "I'm sorry." It was a small thing. The small things had started to feel like tiny weights that lived in my pockets. Some evenings I sat in my chair and watched the hallway while I folded napkins. The sounds of the house were sweet: bath water running, Sophie's laugh, Noah's footsteps. After the baths, I scrubbed the tub. I wiped toothpaste from the sink. I liked leaving the bathroom bright. It made the morning better. One night I went into the bathroom and turned on the fan. I sat on the closed lid of the toilet and let the noise hold me. My throat felt sore, like I had swallowed too much air. I pressed a tissue to my eyes and whispered, "They are good people. You love them." I do not know who I was trying to reassure, myself or the world. I took my wedding ring from the small dish where I keep it and pressed it into my palm. The metal was cool. I felt the circle like a promise. "Help me be kind to myself," I said into the fan's steady hum. The words went nowhere and everywhere at once. The next day, Mr. Lee was bringing his trash bin back from the curb. He lifted a hand. "Morning, Grace," he said. His voice always carried a smile. "You look tired." I started to say, "I am fine," but he shook his head a little and stepped closer. "You're kind," he said, "but remember you are also important." His words were simple. They felt unexpected, like a bird landing on my shoulder. I smiled with wet eyes and said, "Thank you." He patted the lid of the bin as if it were a friend. "Call me if you need anything," he said. Inside, I set the mail on the table. Most envelopes were addressed to Daniel and April. Bank, preschool, a birthday party invitation with a bright balloon on the front. I sorted them into neat piles. I kept my own letters, a church newsletter and a catalog, thin under my hand. April hosted her book club the next week. 6 women sat with glasses of water and plates of cookies. Their voices were warm and quick. I offered to make tea, and April said, "We'll take care of it. Please relax." I sat at the edge of the room and listened. The words settled like soft rain. They talked about kitchens and schedules, about early bedtimes and meal plans. Someone said, "I love an open plan, everything flows." April nodded. "We're trying," she said. "It's hard when things are old-fashioned." She glanced toward the hallway. It was a small glance. It held more than I wanted it to. Later, I stood at the sink and washed a cup. The water was warm. Suds clung to the rim. I heard April's voice from the living room, soft and quick, a whisper to a friend or to her mother on the phone. "She doesn't know how to do things the modern way," she said. There was a hush after, the kind of quiet people make when they do not want someone to hear. My hands started to shake. The cup slipped against the plate and made a thin sound like a bell. I did not drop it. I placed it in the rack and leaned my hands on the counter. I looked at the lemon tree through the window. It was a dark line against the lighter dark of the yard. I stood still until my breath slowed. I told myself it was not meant to hurt. I told myself I am allowed to be old-fashioned if that is what I am. I am allowed to be slow. A person is not less because their way is different. I repeated the thought slowly, like prayer, until it sounded true. The next morning, I took out my phone and searched for a video on how to organize a modern kitchen. A young woman with a bright voice showed clear containers and pretty labels. She moved fast. She smiled the whole time. I watched and paused and watched again. I learned how to fold a grocery bag into a neat little triangle. I put 3 in a drawer and felt a small sense of victory. That night, I wrote a note to myself and taped it inside my closet. "It is okay to ask. It is okay to rest." I read it like a recipe I wanted to remember. I touched the paper with my fingertips, the way you touch a soft page of an old book. The whiteboard on the kitchen wall filled and emptied and filled again. I did my squares without anyone needing to remind me. I picked up Noah and told him a story on the way home. I braided Sophie's hair and hummed. When I put them to bed, I sat on the floor and waited until their breathing deepened. April and Daniel worked late on the laptop at the table. They spoke in low voices about numbers and dates. "If we can close before the end of the month," Daniel said, "we just need to make it smooth." April tapped the keyboard. "Yes," she said, "no surprises." I poured tea and took my cup to my room. On my chair by the window, I watched the porch light flicker and hold. I thought about how much I loved this house and the people in it. I thought about how love made me stretch. I wondered if I had stretched so far I could not feel where my edges were anymore. The days went on. The tiny shifts kept shifting. I kept helping. I kept quiet. When I felt a question jump to my tongue, I swallowed it down and waited for it to fade. I told myself the right time would come to ask what I needed to ask. I told myself I would know it when I felt it. I did not know that the right time was already walking toward me on quiet feet. The day began like any other. I set water to boil and opened a jar of tomatoes. The house was quiet except for the soft play of the children's voices in the next room. The air smelled like garlic and basil. It felt like an ordinary, gentle afternoon. I stirred the sauce and turned down the heat. I wiped the counter and checked the whiteboard for the plan. "Spaghetti, salad, fruit," it said in neat letters. I smiled at the list and reached for a pinch of sugar to balance the tomatoes. The lid stuck, and I used a little more strength than I should have. I got distracted by Sophie's laugh. She called, "Grandma, look," and held up a crayon drawing with a blue sun and pink grass. I went to her, knelt, and admired the art like it was a real garden. "It's beautiful," I said. "You made the sun dance." Behind me, the sauce hissed. I turned fast. The bottom had caught. A thin line of smoke rose and curled under the vent. Noah coughed once from the doorway. I lifted the pot and moved it to a cooler burner. "It's okay," I said softly. "I am here, I will fix it." April came in quickly and waved at the air. She opened a window and turned on the fan. "Please don't try this when I'm not here," she said. "It's useless." The words were quick, like a match strike. I froze. The spoon in my hand felt too heavy for such a small thing. April's eyes met mine, and her voice softened, like she already wished she could pull the words back. "You're useless in the kitchen, Mom," she said, quieter now, almost a sigh. The words settled like dust around us. My chest felt tight. I looked down at the spoon and put it gently in the sink. I nodded once and turned off the stove. "I'll open the back door," I said. My voice sounded like it had been folded in half. I went to the hook by the door and took my coat. The fabric felt familiar under my fingers. I slid my arms into the sleeves and stepped outside. The porch light flickered on even though it was not yet dark. The small yard was still. The lemon tree stood like it was listening. I looked up at it and took a breath. The air was cool and smelled faintly of damp earth. My breath came out in a slow cloud. I watched the porch light settle and hold. I placed my hands on the railing and felt the old paint under my palms. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. The word useless tried to press itself into me, like it wanted to take up a chair and stay. Inside, I heard the kettle start to sing and then quiet again. The fan in the kitchen hummed. The house was doing its ordinary work. I stood outside and let the quiet touch my face. I told myself, "It is a word. It is not your name." The mail came later that day. The envelope was thick and brown, a kind I recognized from years of paying bills on time. April set it on the table with the rest of the letters. The top was stamped with County Tax Office in bold black ink. I cleared a place and opened it with a butter knife. The paper was crisp. I scanned the lines the way you read something familiar. Amount due, due date, property address, 221 B Shelton Street. Then I saw the names at the top. Owners, Daniel and April. That was all. My name was not there. The space where I expected it to be was just white. I stared at the empty place as if my name might appear if I looked hard enough. It did not. I turned the paper over. There was nothing on the back except instructions and a return address. My hands felt cold. The paper felt heavier than it should. I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. I went to the sink and washed my hands for no reason I could name. The water was warm. I watched it run and thought about how names can leave a page without making a sound. The next morning, I took the bus downtown. The county recorder's office was bright and quiet. The floor was clean and shiny. There were chairs with metal legs and a counter with a line that moved in slow, polite steps. Everyone spoke in low voices, as if the room itself asked for gentle. When it was my turn, I stepped to the counter. A clerk with kind eyes looked up. "How can I help you?" she asked. I held my bag close and took a breath. "Can you tell me who owns 221 B Shelton Street?" I asked. "It is my home." My voice shook a little, but I kept it steady enough to carry the words. She typed on her computer. The keys clicked in a soft pattern. She looked at the screen, then back at me. "I can print the current record," she said. "It will show who is listed now." I nodded. "Thank you." She pressed a button, and a printer behind her began to hum. The paper came out 1 inch at a time, slow and sure, like a steady breath. She brought it to the counter and slid it toward me. "Here you go," she said. I looked down. It was the same as the tax letter. Owners, Daniel and April. The date of recording was months ago. It had been months. My eyes moved over the page as if they had lost their place. I waited for my name like you wait for someone to come around a corner. It did not come. It was not a mistake. It was not hiding. It was gone. "Is there anything else you need?" the clerk asked softly. I swallowed. "No," I said. "Thank you." I folded the paper. My fingers trembled. The edges did not line up neatly. I let it be. Outside, I sat on a bench near a small tree that was not mine. The air smelled a little like car exhaust and bakery. People walked by holding coffee cups. A bus sighed to a stop and then moved again. I felt hollow, like a room after the furniture is pushed out. The kind of hollow that echoes. I pressed the folded paper to my lap and stared at my hands. The lines on them looked new to me, like a map I had never studied before. I do not know how long I sat. The sun moved a little. It warmed the edge of my coat. I thought about the day I signed papers in my own kitchen. I thought about trust, about how it can be as light as a feather and as heavy as a stone. When I got home, the house looked the same. The rug at the door was straight. The smell of coffee was still in the air. I took my shoes off and lined them up. I put my bag on the chair and took out the folded record. Daniel was in the living room. He looked up when he saw me. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Everything okay?" His voice was careful. He knows me well. I held up the paper. "Did you take my name off the deed?" I asked. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. They sat between us like a small table. Daniel stood. He ran a hand through his hair, which is something he does when he is nervous. "Mom, it was just for the refinance," he said. His words were fast and soft. "We had to do it that way for the bank to say yes." April came from the kitchen. She dried her hands on a towel and looked from me to Daniel. "We thought it would be easier," she said. "We were going to talk to you." She paused. "We meant to fix it after." I held the paper in both hands so it would not shake. "You promised to keep me safe," I said. My voice was the level voice I use when a child is upset. It helps me, too. Daniel took a step. "You are safe," he said. "Nothing is going to happen." April said, "We're not selling if that's what you're worried about." The room felt too small for all the air. I nodded once. "I need some time," I said. I folded the paper again, even though the crease was messy already. I walked to my room and took out a small bag. I put 3 changes of clothes inside. I put my toothbrush in a little case. I placed my wedding ring box on top and closed the zipper. Marjorie's apartment was quiet and kind. She opened the door before I knocked, like she had been waiting. "Come here," she said. She pulled me in and wrapped her arms around me. She smells like lavender and laundry soap. We sat at her small kitchen table. She made tea and put honey in both cups. She watched my face as if it were a book she wanted to understand. I told her what happened in simple words, the way you tell a story to yourself so you will believe it is true. She did not interrupt. She held my hand when the words turned to silence. "Stay tonight," she said. "Stay as long as you need." I nodded. The nod was heavy and grateful. I tried to sleep. The sheets were cool and clean. The window showed me a small slice of the moon. I lay on my side and watched the light on the wall. My eyes closed and opened like the sea. In the morning, I went home to water the plants and feed the cat that adopted us from the alley. Mr. Lee was bringing in his newspaper. He nodded at me. He has a way of speaking that makes you feel like he has time for you. "You look like you could use a good breakfast," he said. I smiled a little. "I could use a good answer," I said. His eyes were kind. He waited. I told him a simple version. "My name is not on my house anymore," I said. "I did not know until now." He let the words sit. Then he said, "Go talk to someone who knows the law." He said it like you would say, "Wear a coat, it is cold." It was just sense. He took a small card from his pocket. "There's a legal aid office near the library," he said. "They helped my sister last year. Call them." I took the card. The edges were square. The letters were clean and plain. I called from Marjorie's kitchen that afternoon. A calm voice answered. I said my name and my age. I said, "I need to understand a paper I signed." The voice said, "We can meet you tomorrow. Bring what you have." The legal aid office was tidy and warm. The chairs were soft and did not squeak. There was a plant in the corner that looked like it was happy to be there. The receptionist offered water. I said yes and held the cup with both hands. Ms. Alvarez came to the door and said, "Grace." She was small and steady. Her eyes were clear. She held out her hand. "Come in," she said. Her office had a window that looked at a tree. She let me speak. She did not rush me. I told her about the papers at my table and the stamp, about the whiteboard and the chores, about the word in the kitchen that would not leave me. I told her about the envelope from the county and the record at the office. The words moved like water once they started. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she said, "You did a good job telling me." Then she said, "Let me explain a few things in simple words." She spoke slowly, like she was laying stones on a path for me to walk. "You signed a quitclaim deed," she said. "That paper tells the county that you give up your ownership. It is fast. It is final unless a court says there was a problem with how it happened." I watched her hands as she spoke. They were calm hands. She continued, If you sign because someone pressed you or because you were told something that was not the full truth, a judge can look at it. A judge can say, "Wait, let's slow down and see what is fair." She pointed gently at a folder on her desk. "We can ask the court to pause any change or sale while we talk. We can file a notice with the county to show there's a dispute. That way no one can sell or borrow against the house without seeing your name in the file, saying there is a question." I nodded. The words were new and old at the same time. "Pause," I said. The word felt like a bench in the shade. "Yes," she said, "just to give everyone time to breathe and to talk." "What do you need from me?" I asked. My voice had a little strength in it for the first time that week. She smiled a small smile. "Bring anything that shows how you live there and help there," she said. "Bring anything that shows what they promised you." I went home to Marjorie's and made piles. I brought bank statements that showed grocery charges and utility payments in my name. I brought the texts from Daniel and April. I looked at one that said, "You will always have your home." I printed it and felt my hand shake. I found photos of me painting the kitchen years ago, of me holding Noah with flour on my apron, of me planting herbs by the back step. I took the property tax letter that had cut me like paper. I placed each piece in a folder, left to right, like a sentence. I returned to Ms. Alvarez. She nodded slowly as she looked through the papers. Sometimes she looked at me instead of the page, just to show me she was still with me. She put sticky notes on the corners and wrote small, neat words on them. "This helps," she said. "We will send a letter to your son and your daughter-in-law. We will invite them to come and talk. We will ask for a fair solution." She paused. "If they do not come, we will still ask the court to pause things." "How long will it take?" I asked. "Waiting is hard when you are not sure where you will stand." "We move as fast as we can," she said. "Some things take time, but you will not be alone while we wait." That night I slept for 4 hours in a row. It felt like a gift. The next day, Ms. Alvarez called. "I filed the papers to pause any changes," she said. "I also sent the letter. They agreed to meet. There will be a mediator there to help everyone speak. It is not a judge. It is a table." I held the phone to my ear and looked at the window. The light moved across the sink. "Okay," I said. "Thank you," she said. "Bring someone with you if you like, or bring something that makes you feel strong." I thought of my husband's photo. I thought of the kids' drawings. On the day of the mediation, I wore my nice sweater. The blue one that makes my eyes look like sky when I am happy. I put a photo of my husband in my purse. He is smiling in it, standing by the lemon tree that never gave us fruit. I put a picture of Noah and Sophie beside him. The room was quiet and plain. A round table sat in the center. A box of tissues was at one end, like a small white building. The mediator greeted us with a gentle voice. Ms. Alvarez sat beside me, a steady presence. Daniel and April came in together. Daniel's eyes looked tired. April's mouth was a straight line. They sat across from me. The mediator nodded to each of us. "We are here to look for fairness," she said. "We will take turns. We will be respectful." Ms. Alvarez spoke first. She did not use big words. "Grace lived in the home," she said. "She helped and paid and cared. She signed a paper because she was told it would be easier and that nothing would change for her. Now her name is gone. She is asking for safety to be put back." Daniel looked at me. His eyes were wet. "Mom," he said, "I am sorry you are hurt." April sat very still. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked at the table and then at me and looked away. The mediator nodded. "Grace," she said, "would you like to say something?" I took the photo of my husband from my purse and held it in my lap. I took a breath that felt like the first clean breath after a cold. "I never wanted a fight," I said. "I wanted a family." My voice was quiet, but it did not shake. The clock on the wall ticked in a slow, honest way. "I thought love would keep us safe," I said. "I see now that love needs help sometimes. It needs clear words. It needs paper that tells the truth." I looked at Daniel. He dropped his eyes and wiped his face. I looked at April. "I have washed your dishes and folded your baby's clothes," I said. "I have loved you because you love my son. I can forgive words said in a hard moment. I cannot live in a home where my name is gone." April's jaw tightened. Her voice, when it came, was small. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "We were trying to move fast. The bank was hard." The words hung in the air and found a place to sit. The mediator said, "Thank you for speaking." She looked at all of us. "We will take a short break, then we will talk about ways to make this right." She stood. The chairs made a small sound on the floor. No one moved at first. I sat with my photo in my lap. I traced the edge with my thumb. In my mind, I could hear my husband's screwdriver clicking into place. I could smell soup and lemon soap and the faint, warm scent of sleeping children. I felt my own breath find a steady rhythm. Daniel touched my shoulder as he passed. "Mom," he whispered. "I am sorry." I nodded. "I know," I said. I put the photo back in my purse and stood. The room was still. The clock kept time for all of us. We returned to the table after the short break. The room felt softer, as if the air itself wanted us to be gentle. The mediator smiled in a quiet way and nodded to Ms. Alvarez. "Go ahead," she said. Ms. Alvarez opened a folder. She spoke like a person reading a recipe out loud, not to impress, but to make sure everyone hears each step. "I want to share a few simple things," she said. "These are texts where Daniel and April told Grace she would always have her home." She placed a printed page in the center. "This is a bank record. It shows Grace bought groceries and paid utilities for the house." She placed another page beside the first. "This is Grace's age at the time she signed." She paused. 66. She looked up. Her voice stayed calm. "I have one question I want to ask clearly," she said. "Was Grace promised she would always live there?" She turned toward Daniel. Daniel's eyes were wet. He nodded. "Yes," he said. His voice was rough. He cleared his throat. "I said that many times." He looked down, then back at me, and he didn't try to look away. Ms. Alvarez nodded. She turned to April. "And you," she said. "Was that your promise too?" April held her hands together. Her mouth was a thin line. She nodded once, a small motion like a leaf moving in a light wind. April took a breath. "We needed to refinance," she said. "We had to make decisions quickly. The bank person was firm." She swallowed. "We didn't mean harm." Her voice cracked on the last word like a small plate chipping at the edge, but she did not say sorry. The word hung somewhere behind her, not ready yet. Ms. Alvarez kept her tone even, kind. "We are not here to punish," she said. "We are here to restore what was given. We want to put back safety. We want respect." She placed her hand on the folder. "Here is our simple ask. Restore her name on the deed, or record her right to live there for life, or return her share so she can make her own secure home." The mediator wrote a few words on a yellow pad. She underlined quietly. "These are clear options," she said. "We can talk through each one." Silence sat with us for a moment like a person who knows when to talk and when not to. I folded my hands and kept my breath steady. The clock on the wall kept time with a slow, clean tick. I watched Daniel look at April, and then at me. He stood up, then sat back down, then leaned forward and took my hand. "Mom," he said, and his voice was a whisper. "I am sorry." He pressed my fingers. "I thought I was protecting us. I forgot what that cost you." The room felt smaller and kinder all at once. April stared at the table. Her jaw was tight. I could see her swallow. She did not speak. The quiet was not mean. It was heavy. It knew it had something to do. The mediator tapped her pen lightly. "Let's build a path," she said. "We will put steps in order, no rushing, no skipping." She wrote as she spoke. "Step 1, restore Grace's name as owner." She wrote, then looked at us. "Step 2, choose does Grace keep a life right to live there, or does she want the value of her share so she can have her own place?" She paused. "Step 3, set a timeline and a simple plan." Ms. Alvarez added, "We will use a fair value for the house. An appraiser can give a number. Then we can decide what half or another fair share is, based on how you've all lived and paid." She kept it simple. "We can add any credits if needed. We do not need to argue. We can be practical." April lifted her eyes. "We can get an appraisal," she said. Her voice was small but clear. "We can refinance again if we have to." She looked at Daniel. He nodded. "We'll do what we need to," he said. "We just need a plan." I sat up straighter. My hands were warm in Daniel's hands. I felt my husband's ring cool on my finger. I took a breath and found my place. I know you both work hard, I said. I know you love your children. I have no wish to take anything from you. I only want what keeps me whole. I looked at the photo in my purse without taking it out. I saw my husband's smile in my mind. I will not live where I am not wanted, I said. My voice was soft. It did not shake. Please put my name back on the deed, and then, if you can, buy my share. I need my own little place. The words surprised me and did not surprise me. They had been growing somewhere inside me, like a seed in a paper cup on a sunny windowsill. Now they were ready to be planted in the ground. The mediator wrote, "So the plan is, restore her name now, then within a set time, refinance and pay her for her share so she can move to her own home." She looked at April and Daniel. "Can you do that?" Daniel nodded. "Yes," he said, "we can do that." April looked at the pen in the mediator's hand. "Yes," she said, and her voice was a little stronger. "We can do that." The words did not feel light, but they felt honest. Ms. Alvarez smiled a gentle smile. "We can put this into an agreement," she said. "Everyone can sign it. Then we can ask a judge to approve it so there are no doubts later. When the judge signs, we record the new deed right away. No waiting." We set dates that made sense. We agreed to an appraiser within the week. We agreed to meet again in 2 weeks to sign the final papers if all looked right. The mediator read the plan back to us slowly, as if it were a poem meant to be understood. When it was time to sign the mediation agreement, the pen did not feel heavy in my hand. It felt like a tool, not a burden. I wrote my name in steady letters. Daniel and April signed too. Ms. Alvarez gathered the pages with neat hands and said, "We're almost there." The days after were a gentle blur of steps. An appraiser came and walked through the rooms. He measured with a tape that snapped back into its shell with a little click. He made notes about light and space and the condition of the roof. He asked simple questions and thanked me for my time. At night, I stayed with Marjorie. We drank tea and watched the news with the sound low. She put her hand on my knee sometimes without words. I slept a little better each night, like my body remembered how to rest once it knew a plan was in place. Ms. Alvarez called with the appraisal number. She spoke plainly. "This is the value," she said. "Here is what your share would be." She paused. "Are you okay with this?" I did the math out loud and felt a small wave of surprise. It was enough to make a small life. It was enough to make a safe life. "Yes," I said. "I am okay with it."